Hi, everyone. Here's another section of the Muddiest Point in lesson plan part two. And so the question was, what is the difference between direct instruction and guided practice? So again, I've implied or forced in a structure for your lesson plan design. And so in the first part, it's direct instruction, which means that it's mostly teacher-led or teacher-directed. And then the guided practice is you have whole class discussion, and then you work it into smaller groups, which eventually leads them into the independent practice. So that being said, the difference between your direct instruction or modeling and your guided practice is who is in charge of most of the learning, who is in charge of most of the direction. So in your direct practice, what you're doing is you're taking this learning objective, and so we'll use this one as an example. Students will use the appropriate tools to measure the temperature, volume, length, and weight that they may encounter. So this is where they need to get to by the end of the objective, or by the end of the lesson, excuse me. So by the end of the lesson, students need to demonstrate to you as the teacher that they can use the appropriate tools to measure temperature, volume, length, and weight. So knowing that, you have to get them to that point by the end. Now we're going to back it up. What do you have to teach them? What skills do you need to teach them in the direct instruction to make sure that they can do that by the end of the objective, by the end of the lesson, sorry. So what skills do you need to teach them in the direct instruction so that they can do that by the end of the lesson? That's what happens in the direct instruction. So in terms of this, we would have to probably demonstrate and define what is a thermometer, what is a graduated cylinder, what is a digital scale, how do those things measure temperature, volume, length, weight, that of different types of matter. So in our direct instruction, we have to directly give them those skills and that information in a way that makes the most sense for that learning objective. So in this case, because it's more hands-on, I'm probably going to have hands-on things in front of me that I'm demonstrating and showing and defining and stating what these things do. I may even have the students follow along on their own lab tables, but direct instruction means that it's teacher-led, teacher-directed. So that means me as a teacher, I am providing that information to students about those skills that they need so that they can master that learning objective by the end of the lesson. Then the guided practice is just that, it's practice. But that means that the ownership and the direction and the instruction shifts from the teacher to the student. So now the students are the ones that are practicing those skills. I've taught them in the direct instruction, I've modeled those skills, I've modeled those things, and now I'm going to have them practice those things. And the way that I'm having you do the lesson plan is they're going to have some discussion about that, and they're going to do some cooperative learning about that. So in this case, maybe depending on, again, depending on the type of strategy you want to use, maybe we have some a discussion strategy like think, pair, share, or concentric circles, or whatever you want to use that has them discuss some of these topics. And in doing that, you as a teacher, you're floating around and you're checking for understanding. Do they understand? Do they understand what you were doing? Do they understand the topics? Do they understand the skills? And if they don't, I mean, in reality, we're going to go back and we're going to reteach some of those. If they do, okay, they're kind of understanding. Now in cooperative learning, I'm going to have them actually try to start using the appropriate tools to measure temperature, volume, length, and weight. They're going to practice that as a small group. And then in the independent practice, they're going to show you by themselves whether or not they can master that skill. So the difference between the direct instruction and the guided practice is the ownership of the instruction. Direct instruction, me as a teacher, I'm pushing that instruction to them. I'm showing, I'm demonstrating, I'm teaching those skills. And then in guided practice, they're practicing the things that we taught them so that we can check for their understanding, so that we know whether or not they're getting it, whether or not they can apply it or understand it or analyze it or evaluate it before they're moving on to that independent practice, so that we can check in and reteach and clarify understanding as needed.